You're taking a picture. Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back with our episode 11 recap. What an episode of Survivor that just was. That was so good. I mean, this was just like intense from beginning to finish. And there's things that I didn't like, but damn, that was awesome. That was just such a great vote. I didn't think it was actually going to happen. And this is like the first time in a while I feel really surprised by what just took place. I mean, that was awesome. I mean, you had two of the most invisible people in the season so far vote correctly to vote out who looked like a front runner to win the game early in the game. And not too long ago, I still thought had a chance to win for sure. That was so good.
Yeah, so good. Rip everybody's winner picks. That was a big loss for all the people studying the edit this week. But holy moly, that was a crazy tribal council. Part of the reason I'm late is because I was talking to my family about just like how exactly that broke down. And the biggest question I have is, was, are people going to figure this out? Mm-hmm. And then we immediately cut to Sarah just nailing Tony over this. So super excited to see how this aftermath goes. But wow, this was another one where it felt like almost every single name was thrown out. I think there were 3 working plans at the same time, to the point where I thought Tony's final plan, the correct one, wasn't going to happen because too many people were lying to each other.
Yeah.
So really, really, really cool. I loved watching Jeremy's struggle of trusting Tony and Kim seeing it so blatantly for what it was. And I get it. Like I get the struggle. I get the blind belief. I get it all. But man, that was crazy. Michelle voted correctly. This time
knew what she was doing. Didn't have to just throw her arms in the air. This time she knew why she was voting this way. I mean, Alexa, I'll ask this right now. And I mean, I think this is a very serious question that has a difficult answer. Who is the MVP of the episode?
I think it's Tony.
Yeah, I know. I was kidding. I was being so sarcastic.
Okay, I was like, yeah. Because again, we're talking about this current episode. And I know the prop it's been really weird this season, but if anybody had Tony getting 10 confessionals in an episode, congratulations. I think he got 40.
Yeah.
Holy moly. This was Tony's episode. And the clip that was going around for the past few days was the Sarah Lucina fashion show, which we'll get to. And that was great. But that, I feel like that Sarah confessional, I think really set the tone for what the rest of the season is going to be. She says, Tony wants to play advantages. He wants to go all out. He's losing his mind. I'm playing a really good social game. And we are now going to watch those two very, very different types of games go at it. And it's going to be great.
Now, let me ask, based on what we're seeing next week, was this kind of a War Dog moment from Tony, though? Did he do this too soon? Kind of like how War Dog got rid of Kelly very early, and Kelly still says to this day for no reason. Could it be that Tony getting rid of Sophie hurts his relationship with Sarah too much, and now he finds that he has to work with people who are going to see him as a huge threat? And even though Jeremy is going to be very thankful to Tony this week because they voted together and he did save Jeremy, I mean, I don't think Jeremy and Michelle would have any problem turning around and voting out Tony next week if everybody wanted to, because his resume is unbelievable already. And he hasn't done anything. He didn't do anything in the first half of the game, and his resume is unreal.
Yeah. And that's what Kim said right after they got back from the immunity challenge. She was like, he just won 2 immunities, and that's huge for me. So again, I don't think it's foreshadowing. I get what you're saying. I do think that this can be seen as like a War Dog move. The difference is he has an idol and he is not afraid to play it. So I think him doing that, and I mean, for what it's worth, he has won 2 immunities. What's to say he can't keep winning them? These were not 2 immunities I ever would have guessed Tony to win. I don't know which ones he would have won.
Yeah.
But he has that idol as a fallback. And I think, yes, no one trusts him. Because I think you're right. I think Michelle, Jeremy, Denise, Kim, every single person there will have absolutely no problem voting him out. But I think he's doing what Tyson did a few weeks ago. Tony's official confessional account was 18. That is absolutely insane.
I'm sorry. We're talking about Tyson. I didn't mean to distract you.
No, it's okay. He did what Tyson did, where he almost, I don't think it was purposeful, but it worked. He made everybody so confused that they're not like necessarily thinking it. The only person who is seeing this is Kim. Kim is the only person who is just seeing this exactly for what it is. So maybe that means Kim and Sarah hook up. I mean, Kim just waltzed into that group of 5 and was like, hey fam, what are we doing? Like that was wild. So I think alliances are just so out the door. And now it's I think we're in voting blocks, and it was Jeremy again this week until Tony kind of decided it wasn't.
Yeah, and oh man, this has such a really cool old school feel to it. Even though there's so many advantages and all of that stuff, this has one of those old school feels. But I'm not talking like season 2 old school. I'm talking like Sesternino level old school, or in with the Cerevo when she did the what was it, the 3-2-1 and all that.
Like a 3-2-1.
This feels like that. And like what's so interesting is right now, if you're looking at this as a viewer, you're saying Tony is playing the best game, hands down, bar none. It doesn't matter. If Tony gets to the end, he deserves to win. How did he do this? How did he come in here and pull this off? Like, how is he doing this? But is this going to be a season where Tony actually wins it? Or is this going to be a dust settles kind of season from here on out, where like Tony hangs around and then kind of is like our fallen angel, our robbed goddess? Is it going to be Tony? And then all of a sudden somebody's able, who played a calmer game, is able to win? Because after tonight's episode, I mean, look, I don't think Michelle and Nick have great prospects of winning, but they could win in certain scenarios, like against each other with a returnee from Edge of Extinction. But like, I feel like Denise is drawing dead in the water. Like, I feel like tonight really showed who's drawing dead in the water. But is this going to be a dust settles season, or are we just about to watch Tony go absolutely bananas for the next 4 weeks and just sit here and eat our popcorn while we watch it happen?
I think we're going to watch Tony go crazy because I think Tony's going to go crazy. The difference is everyone knows that he does this. So now I'm really excited to see like how they navigate it, because I don't really know how you navigate it. Because again, now he has an idol. He's probably going to tell people and like find a way to use that as leverage, and not in a bad way. Like I think he'll be able to hide behind it. And then, he has Sarah just ready to completely tear him down. So I think that's going to make a difference. He's going to be running around like crazy, and Sarah's going to be chasing him the entire time. I don't know if Sarah's going to climb a tree to get him, but we may have to see that.
The spy nest. I love that. But love that. Do we actually think this was a good move when all is said and done? Because it was a 4-3-2. He had an alliance. He had an alliance. Either way he went, he had a 5-person alliance. Now he's got 4 people. Sarah doesn't seem like she trusts him. I don't think Ben's going to trust him right away for sure. Kim and Denise, I mean, they could work with him, or they could. Do you think this ultimately was a bad move? Did he do this too early? I know it was exciting. I'm not going to complain about this move, but was it a bad move?
I don't know. I think that's something we have to kind of wait and see, which is probably the case for all of them. At first glance, it does make me nervous because I'll need to rewatch it, but his motive was Sarah is getting too close to Sophie, which we've talked about for a little while, that this like three's a crowd with them. I think if he actually loses Sarah here, I think that could be a bad move, because yes, he has that alliance on the other side, but Jeremy is the only one who actually, he's Jeremy like the lifeline. Kim doesn't care. Denise clearly didn't trust him either. Michelle, I think Michelle will vote to get herself farther, which is great. But even Jeremy, it took so much for him to believe in Tony. So I think him losing all the trust, you can't play alone for this long. There's 8 people left. You can't play alone for 8 people left. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's both. I think it's a great move. I think he needed to get rid of Sophie for sure. I think he did need to get rid of her because she was getting too close to Sarah. And even Sarah is saying in the preview, "You ruined my game." Well, at the end of the day, your game's supposed to revolve around me, Sarah, not around Sophie. What's going on here? Sophie had an idol, which none of them knew. As we saw tonight, she stood up and said, "I had an idol in my pocket." And Ben's reaction was like, "What?" And like you could tell she wanted to say that so everybody knew.
Idols and don't play them.
I mean, and absolutely, Tony is going to end up being able to say, if he sits at final 3, so Sophie's going to fight for Tony. Granted, if she doesn't come back into the game and say, "You voted me out when I had an idol and you didn't even know I had an idol. Like, you just got me at the right time. A week later, I'm on edge. I'm ready to play my idol, whatever. Like, but you got me before I was ready to play it." So I think it was a great move from that perspective. I think what could hurt him ultimately, though, is the trust factor with some people now. I don't think he's trustworthy to anybody. Like, I think Jeremy bought into everything Tony was telling him, and he was getting lied to again. But then Tony had a change of heart, but it makes Tony look like he's being truthful to Jeremy, which in turn means Michelle's going to trust and Nick's going to trust. So right now they have 4. But Sarah's going to try to blow stuff up, I feel like. Kim and Denise are already seeing through it. They want to get rid of Jeremy and they want to get rid of Tony. And then you have Ben. How hurt is Ben going to be by this? Because we've seen him play emotionally in the past. And are they going to be able to convince Michelle and Nick and Jeremy that Tony's just looking out for himself? We got to vote Tony out. Plus, like, Michelle and Nick and Jeremy aren't stupid. They might want to keep Tony around so they don't go home, but they also know that if they sit next to Tony, they're not winning this game. So I think it's a best of both worlds. Look, I think it was a good move because obviously you get rid of Sophie while she has the idol. Great move from our perspective. As a viewer, we know all of this. Tony didn't know that Sophie had an idol, and he still pulled this move. So you have to take that out of the equation and think he's just voting out Sophie to vote out Sophie. He's not voting out Sophie because he knows she has an idol.
Right. Yeah, I think you lose Sarah and you lose Ben. I obviously don't lose Nick and Michelle. I think Kim and Denise were kind of already floating around as is. So losing, I'm just curious to see how much damage Sarah and Ben can do. I think that they can do a lot of damage because at the end of the day, nobody trusts him. So Sarah and Ben can go walk over to Michelle and Nick. They can go walk over to Denise and Kim and say, like, all right, so when do you want to get rid of him? Like, I think everyone would be okay with it. And like you said, even Jeremy would be okay with it. So who knows? The
hardest part is going to be they're not going to be able to get rid of him next week. So somebody's going to go. And as the numbers start dwindling, now all of a sudden, like, all he has to do is pull 3 people together. And then all of a sudden you're at final 6. And now he's just got to maybe win an immunity, get to 5, bring in the person from Edge. Guys, we should get rid of the person from Edge or something. Like, he's got so many outs now. Like, this is what's so amazing about the game that Tony has played to this point. He started off doing nothing purposely because he knew that's how he was going to get far in this game. Everybody let him get to the merge. He laid as quiet as he could for an episode or 2, and now he's going full force to a point where any move Tony makes, it's almost like it's a little too late or it's starting to get too late. It's like what he said tonight. I wanted to wait until the sun was going down and we only had a few minutes until we went to tribal council to tell people. Right now, the sun is going down on the window to get rid of Tony. And you need to make this move before it's tribal council time, like before he gets to final 3, like, and your window is disappearing because now you're at final 8. You merged at what, 12, 13? I don't even remember, but however many you merged at, you had your chance. You had so many chances, and now he's running around like a psychopath.
I know. It's going to be so interesting. It's going to be so good. But that was a good is that not an analogy, but good phrasing there. This
whatever it was.
Or to Tony. I liked it, whatever it was, Mr. MFA.
Yeah, if somebody could do me a favor and like edit that part out of this episode and put it into an audition tape for me, that would be fantastic. Thanks. I appreciate it, everybody. Exactly. But yeah. But there's a lot that goes into this episode. And one thing I wanted to talk about, because the way I actually thought that this was going to play out is I thought Jeremy wasn't going to buy it. And so Tony and Nick were going to end up saying, screw it, let's just vote for Jeremy. And then 2 votes were going to come up for Ben and no votes were going to come up for Sophie. That's what I thought before the votes started being read. I thought we were going to see a 5-2-2, the way it was supposed to initially play out, because Jeremy wasn't buying it. And now, obviously, Jeremy, it's easy to sit here and say Jeremy's an idiot for this. Like, how could you not buy this? Why don't you believe this? Whatever. And granted, he did buy it, but there's so much that he needs to think about in this moment, because if he really thinks he's close with Kim and Denise and Michelle, and he thinks like, look, like, why, like, the 4 of us are tight. And now Tony comes to you and says, you and Michelle need to vote differently. You need to do this. Is that because Tony's starting to think he doesn't have the numbers, and so he needs you guys to split up your votes to ensure that he votes out who he wants to vote out? Like, there's so many layers that go into this when you're not watching the edited version and seeing all of the confessionals that are going on.
Yeah, I would love this. This is a good episode that Exit Press like would be fantastic for. And this is the episode that, like, if we get the opportunity to talk to players after the season, this is the episode that I have a lot of questions about, because last episode we were really confused, and it's almost as if the players were confused because they were talking to tribal council, because we come back, Michelle is like, I had no idea what I just did. Ben explains it. Kim explains it. Like, after the fact, they all get it. This one, this just had so many layers happening so quickly that Sophie like had no idea that it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to see how this one actually breaks down.
Yeah, I am too. And this is one that we obviously won't get till we get the exit interviews and all of that, because, you know, with Edge of Extinction, we won't get to hear it. But I mean, it's another thing too. Like we've been so starved for like this Tony content. Like Tony's obviously been a huge character the entire season, but not in the Tony way yet. And I always think about like when somebody gets 18 confessionals, we normally storm to our laptops and type up how ridiculous it is that that person was a camera hog and we hate them and it always goes to men and blah, 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 blah. I don't think that there's going to be many people complaining that Tony got 18 confessionals or whatever the hell he got tonight, because every single thing he delivered was absolute gold, like absolute gold. And I mean, even if he goes home next week, I got my fill of Tony, and I'm so happy that like we got the version of Tony that we just got tonight.
Yeah. The price of milk, it's going up.
The price of milk is going up. So let's talk about the price of milk going up. Let's
is
obviously
Michelle's fantastic lie.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about the lie, and I'm glad you said that before I did, because now I don't have to defend her and get yelled at in the confession in the chat here.
That was amazing. I watched that and I thought I would have no idea how to escape that in the moment, because everyone knows that Michelle's rich, or Michelle was rich. So how can she possibly, she has to say that she bought something. I, in that moment, would not have immediately been able to say, oh, it has no effect on me now. It's only when I'm voted out, which is so good. Because who the hell's going to vote on Michelle? I loved that lie, and Tony bought it.
Yeah, and I think
that's a believable lie.
Yeah, and I think Michelle's been thinking about this. I don't think that she came up with this like right on the spot. I think this has been going on in her mind. Like, what am I going to say if people ask if I have tokens or anything like that? And I think it is a good lie, because you're saying it doesn't, I'm just buying an advantage to get back in the game, which makes sense, because if maybe it was a great advantage, like Tony doesn't know what the advantage was, but if you think you're going to get out, like voted out of the game or something, and you have an advantage, you could come back in. And honestly, I think this is where it helps that Michelle is super, super underestimated by all these other winners, is because it might seem stupid on like the outside. It might be like, oh, like who would buy something for 4 tokens and you'd still have to get voted out and then come back into the game? Like, who would believe that? But I think Tony's underestimating Michelle and is probably sitting there going, that sounds like something Michelle would do. And he bought the lie. I mean, that coin is going to come out at some point on this season. I really, really believe that. This isn't going to be like a Troyzan idol thing where it just comes out because everybody else is playing an idol. Like, I feel like this is coming out at some point in the season, is going to have a big effect.
Well, I think he also doesn't think that was I've been choking on my water cough, not a corona cough. I think Tony, like, his mind wouldn't, or anyone's mind wouldn't even go to, oh my God, that's so expensive. That's only a user or like a viewer opinion, because they have no idea what this value is. And Tony's like begging for money. Tony's looking for 6 fire tokens. And I guess this is now a good transition to talk about this. At the very beginning was a little confused. I thought he had to buy that off of them and then could use it on someone, which I would not have been pleased about. I like this. This cleans the table a little bit.
It's exactly what we talked about Nick on our predictions episode. If you didn't listen to Nick one, go listen to it. He's great. It's 2 hours long. We barely talk about season 40.
Like literal best podcast we've ever done.
We pretty much talk about season 40 for 30 minutes. So if you want to hear like our takes on Survivor and fire tokens and things like that, go listen to that podcast. And I think it's exactly this. Awesome advantage. Awesome. I think it's great. I think it's a great advantage. Awesome. Coming from Edge of Extinction, it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. And I'm not like, and like, you know, I try not to curse that much on this podcast, but it's bullshit, because you're saying, okay, you could lose immunity and not be able to vote. And you have to give your tokens to somebody who's out of the game. And the people who are out of the game are getting to decide that. Now, if this is, I mean, and this is like why I'm excited for what's coming up next. Like, I'm so excited for what's coming up in like season 41, season 42, because I think this is an advantage that's going to stick. And I think it's good. And I think the extortion is going to be some, like, let's say Jeremy found this and Jeremy says, all right, Tony, give me your 6 fire tokens. I want 6 fire tokens, or you don't get to vote tonight, and you don't get to play, and you don't get to do an immunity challenge. But then also, it's impacting how you have to view, your relationships with people. Can you really extort somebody and still get their votes and not be voted out of the game? You know what I mean? So that's what it is to me, to give it for Natalie and Parvati. And then at the same time, they get to determine how many they think is worthwhile. They could have just said, you know what? We really, really hate Nick Wilson. 46 fire tokens. Nick, go get 46 fire tokens. And if you can't get them, you don't get to do the immunity challenging. You don't get to vote tonight. It's ridiculous. Like, I think it's giving too much power to people who are not in. They were voted out of the game. Why should they be able to impact it that much? Now, granted, they got very, very lucky that it was Parvati and Natalie who found it, who everybody loves and is so excited to see work together, and that they gave it to Tony, because Tony gives one of the best confessionals ever while talking about it, because he's so excited and he's having the Toniest day of all Tony days. And then he picks up this thing and he's reading it and he is just giddy as a school child. And he picks that up and it's like, you've got to be kidding me. The last line, really? This is being used on me? And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal, but it's stupid that Edge of Extinction gave it to him.
Yeah, him just like flicking the thing out of his hand. I was like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're completely right with that, because I actually think like a almost direct quote from Parvati is, how can we blow up the game? Like, she said, like, whose game can we blow up, or how can we blow it up? That's like a tough thing to hear when she's literally not playing right now.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I like that the person can decide, but yeah, like how this could play, like how this would play out in 41 or 42, I'm not so sure, because you're right. Like, if I'm going to extort you, that's like ruining a relationship. So I need to find a way to do it that like puts you at a disadvantage, but doesn't make you like mad at me that I'm making you like steal literally everyone's fire tokens.
Well,
but
Tony,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Tony compared it to the mob, right? He can't do this in his regular life because he's a cop and he can't extort people. The mob extort people. The mob extort people before they kill them. That's what they do. And then if the person doesn't pay up after they've been extorted, they get killed. Well, how come the people who've already been killed are now extorting the mobster? It doesn't make sense. It's bogus. Right. And that's the thing. I don't think that this is a bad advantage. I think this is an advantage that has a lot of legs, much like the fire tokens and other things from the season. But the fact that two people, and now Parvati and Natalie, have such an advantage when it comes to how many tokens they have going into this challenge, or whenever this challenge is going to be, it's crazy. And Tony, who has played such a good game, he's able to rebound because he's able to pay it off. He has good relationships with people. He goes and wins immunity. He ends up getting 2 fire tokens anyway. So like it's not the end of the world for him, but everything worked out so perfectly for him that like this could have really ended somebody's game. Like, if this is Jeremy, I don't think Jeremy's able to get 6 fire tokens, and Jeremy goes home tonight, we would be saying through a fault of his own because he left last week. But now that we're living in this timeline, we know that Jeremy didn't go home this week because his relationships with people were good enough to carry him through. Had he had this stupid extortion thing, he wouldn't have been able to use the relationships he built to get through. And no, Logchi, I cannot not complain for once. I will complain all day. I will always wag my finger in the producers' faces. Always going to wag my finger in their faces if they're going to do bullshit with Edge of Extinction. Edge of Extinction is bullshit, and that was bullshit.
Michelle didn't get this. Michelle would have been screwed.
She would have never been able to do it because she had 0. I mean, and that's the thing too. Tony had 3 of them. So like, that was really good for him because he already had them.
Yeah, definitely. What I'm curious about, and I maybe they'll show in a secret scene, Tony wins 2 fire tokens. He owes 3 people money. Who didn't get a fire token back, and how is he explaining that?
I agree. And did he give them back already? Like, we haven't seen him give back to anybody. So who's he going to? Like, I feel like he's probably going to go to Jeremy because, Jeremy's a go, and I feel like he's going to go to Nick. I feel like Ben isn't going to get his fire token back, or Tony's going to give, or what Tony's going to do, because he's very smart with this, is he's going to take 2 fire tokens maybe and give them to Ben, and maybe not give one to Nick or give one to Jeremy as almost like I'm sorry for doing this, and then kind of say, Jeremy, I'm not giving you a fire token back, but I saved your life last week. Like, he's got a tricky game to navigate here, but knowing Tony, he's going to figure something out. Yeah,
he did. These are tough waters to navigate, but you're right. He voted with 2 of them and completely screwed one of them. So that's a really good way to look at it. And another thing, again, when this first was announced, I was like, oh my God, this gives the purchaser such an advantage. Because
Mhm.
in my head, I thought, okay, Tony gets 6 fire tokens, and then he can point at Sophie and say, you cannot participate and you can't vote. That's what I originally thought. And then I realized it's just Edge of Extinction only extorting
Mhm.
him. So I originally thought like, oh my God, that's way too much power to give one person. But I like that it's actually just like, as long as you get the money, nothing happens. So
Mhm.
I liked that it wasn't like another advantage thrown into the game. It was a really, really bad disadvantage, takes away some of the money, and now everything's quote unquote back to normal. I liked that. I was
I
very
agree.
fearful that I was going to start playing, which I thought would have been really bad.
I completely agree. I mean, now Natalie and Parvati each have 3 extra. What are they going to be able to buy? They might be able to buy 9 advantages by the time this
They
challenge
could
comes.
buy
And then,
booze.
yeah, it's literally, they're going to be able to buy every advantage and booze. And it's going to be at the point where it's going to be, all right, Natalie and Parvati, first one to raise your hand gets back in the game. And they're just going to raise, like, whoever raises first is going to get in. I mean, that's just like at the point. I mean, they have so many of these things. And look, good on them for walking around and hunting and doing what they need to do. I mean, good for them for doing what they're supposed to be. But man, I don't know. I just get rid of Edge of Extinction. Get rid of it.
Just end
Get
it,
rid of it.
please.
That's it.
Um,
But I do want to say too, like, just, and then we'll leave Edge of Extinction. The Tyson quote tonight. Anybody who remembers in Blood versus Water, this was also his like winner's quote, essentially. When he ripped apart Colton after Colton left the game, and he said, some people come out and play Survivor and like they play the game and they like it. Other people let it ruin their entire lives. And he's talking about Colton, and it's right after Colton quit. I forget exactly what but it was exactly what he was saying about the people like, you know, Wendell, are you going to be okay? Yeah. Adam's not going to be okay for a long time. And look, Adam's fine. Adam's good. We've seen Adam since he came back from this thing. Like, Adam's fine. You know what I mean? But like at the same time, he's right. I mean, Adam's going to take this harder, but it just reminded me so much of that Blood versus Water thing when he just started talking about how Colton's going to let this ruin his life. And that's his, you know, sorry to be him.
Good on you for catching that. I never would have gotten that.
Yeah, it made me happy. It made me happy, but go ahead.
I have a quick question about the immunity challenge. I have like a couple Jeremy comments. When you were watching the challenge, did it seem as though Jeremy like accidentally dropped off at the end?
So did he think that both people dropped off, or was he just stepping off and like giving Tony the win? It seemed weird the way he fell off. It didn't seem normal.
It looked like a step off, and Tony was like, oh shit, and Jeremy like didn't have a reaction. It seemed very weird.
I agree. And like, he seemed really pissed, and I don't know if he just like stumbled and fell or whatever, but he looked like it looked intentional. Like, it really did. And I'm going to watch it again in a little bit, but it did look intentional.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that. And second, like, funny Jeremy comment or moment. This was right at the beginning when Ben is like the brother who gets in fights with everybody. Like, now Jeremy and Ben hate each other. It's so funny. But when Jeremy and Ben are talking, and Jeremy's like, you know who the biggest threat is here? And Ben's like, you? And Jeremy's like, no, it's not.
And then Jeremy's trying to tell Ben it's him, and Ben's like, no, it's not me. I'm not the threat. You're the threat. And like, I love how they were arguing about who's a bigger threat. Like, what is that? Like, who's the alpha male? Not me. So funny.
Not
it's
me.
So funny.
No, it's you, large muscular man.
I know, man who is 6'4", 6'5", and I mean, no, I caught that, and I thought that was really interesting. And going back to who I think is kind of drawing dead here, I think Ben's drawing dead after this episode. I feel like just that whole conversation between him and Jeremy, Ben would need to sit with the right people. Now, then again, I thought people were drawing dead in Survivor Gabon too. I thought Bob and Susie had no chance, and Bob wins and Susie gets 3 votes. Like, it happens a lot throughout the history of the show. I mean, everybody thought Jenna Maraska was drawn dead. Vesepia, everybody thought she was drawn dead. And like, sometimes people can come back because that huge threat goes right at the end. Kathy Vavrick O'Brien and what do you call it? Rob Sesternino. And, like, this happens a lot. I mean, even down to the people who make the argument that Devin should have won 35. Like, was Ben kind of that dust settling winner then? And is he kind of on that same path here? Around this time, everybody was still hating Ben in Heroes, Healers, Hustlers too.
Yeah, exactly. I'm liking Ben. I think I
love him. He's amazing.
Very endearing. I could listen to him saying like, yeah, for every single woman walking down that runway for hours.
He's just having a good time. And I think the thing with Ben is like, I think he's one of those guys who when he gets caught off guard, he gets very defensive. And like, that's not necessarily like a bad flawed, like that's not like necessarily like
that's
bad
a natural reaction.
It is like, and I mean, like we've had conversations off air where like I'll say something to you and I'm like joking, you get mad and I'm like, oh shit, like I went too far, like didn't mean that.
Very normal.
It's very normal, but like he's playing with the best of the best at getting under your skin. He really is. And so I think we're seeing him more defensive on this season than we be used to seeing. And like, man, I think he's having a good time out there. I mean, I think he's in the final 8 of Survivor Winners at War. He's playing a fun, good game, but man, we're about to start seeing some tonight was blood. Last week was blood. I feel like next week, like it's going to be nuts. Like, I feel like people like Ben and Jeremy going at it, Tony and Sarah going at it, Tony and Ben going at it. Michelle sitting there, like playing with her teeth with like a little piece of like weed because she's not going to have to apologize to anybody. Like, that's a great thing. I mean, everybody's going to be going at it. It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be so good. I'm loving the pace. I don't understand anything, but I'm really enjoying it.
Now, when was the last time they did this immunity challenge? Do you remember?
This reminded me of the one that Julie Rosenberg won, but that one was like you had to kind of hold it over your head rather than push it. They haven't done this one in a really long time.
Because I couldn't.
Tough one.
I couldn't remember the last time they did it, and Jeff said like this is the longest it's ever gone on, and I was like, huh, when was the last time they did this one? And I don't know if it's happened before or what, but this was a hard challenge. Like the way you had to step back while like you were balancing it to a point where like you had to let it give towards you. This was a hard one just to even get started on, I feel like.
Yeah, that's what I was confused about. The transition, because a lot of people lost during the transition because it could lean. It was leaning on something to stand. So I was curious like what the problem was with like it going too far. I don't know.
I think the way the challenge started was when you hit it and it started to lean towards you, because up until then it was just sitting on its perch just fine. Yeah. So you had to get it moving, but then once you got it moving, like it was a crazy challenge. It was tough. I'm really surprised Tony won it. I really am. I thought Jeremy was going to win it for sure. And maybe Jeremy did just have a bad go of it or something. I don't know. Maybe he thought that it was over or didn't realize or something, but yeah, I thought he was going to beat him.
The pole being wobbly too, like that made it tough. But
yeah, made it for Denise. She literally couldn't win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was one that you need some serious forearm muscles for.
Yeah, exactly. So people are saying in the chat that it was Munoz versus Gen X and David Wright won. Makes sense. I mean, I could say, the man with the most forearm muscles in Survivor history, David Wright. So what? How are we? I guess I'm trying to think of like Tony was obviously the star of tonight's episode, but how are we seeing like who's going to be like his opposition here, like moving forward? Like Kim feels to me like somebody who's definitely going to be trying to lead this force against Tony. And do we think Kim has any chance here, or do we think that Kim's just being led to the slaughter for next week and then the game's kind of going to begin? Like, what are we thinking about? Like anything right now?
I think it's going to be some combination of Kim and Sarah. Who was Kim talking to in the preview? Is it Sarah or is it Denise?
I think it's Denise.
Probably. It's probably Denise. I think Kim and Sarah have to team up. And I'm this is one of the situations where you like Sarah's just like, Tony, I'm done. But then maybe because Sarah lost her number one, Sarah's entire game is blown up. Maybe Sarah like makes the rounds, realizes that maybe no one's interested in working with her, and then she kind of has to go back to him. So I think in order for Tony to go, both Sarah and Kim have to work together, because Kim's been feeling this for a really long time. And it's like she wanted to get Tony out before it was cool. Now it's going to be a little harder, especially with him having that idol. And I'm curious to see if he like mentions having the idol. I actually think him making it clear that he has an idol would work in his advantage. What's
crazy is the side that's opposing Tony at one time or another was holding advantages, or Ben didn't really have one, but he was at least touching it. And in the last two tribals, Sarah had to use hers. Sophie gets voted out with hers. And then who's the other? It was Sarah. Kim had to play her idol, and Denise played hers a couple weeks ago. So now they have nothing. And now the side with Tony, even though Jeremy had to use his and Nick has never known where an idol was or an advantage was the entire season, Tony has an advantage and Michelle has an advantage. It's funny how that has completely reversed where, you start saying to yourself, is Tony going to get voted out of this game in a Sari type way? And now it's like the Sarahs and the Bens and Kim who are in danger of going out in a Sari type way because they've actually had to play their advantages. And it's this really weird thing of the people who started high. I mean, we are literally seeing like a peak from all those people who were playing well at the beginning. And now they dropped off right as Tony started peaking. And like, it's unbelievable how like the up and down coincided so much with Tony's just straight, like, I'm going for the win here. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Is an idol going to get rehidden because Sophie was voted out?
I think maybe. And Tony also, like, her saying that out loud, Tony pays attention to things like that. And I would not be surprised if we see, look, Sarah hates me. Sarah's mad at me. I got to find the idol that Sophie didn't play before anybody else finds the idol that Sophie didn't play. Do not be surprised if we come out of next week's episode with Tony Vlachos, whatever, being in the final 7 of Survivor Winners at War with 2 immunity idols and a fire making challenge on the horizon. Do not be surprised.
Yeah. And Nick Wilson is going to be just walking right behind him, creeping into view. Whichever editor figured that out deserves a raise. I cannot get enough of Nick creeping into the camera.
And it was amazing how like that storyline that seems like it's just a joke the entire time has such a huge effect on this episode because Tony's trying to get up before everybody. And here comes Nick just like walking by and he's like, Tony. And Tony's like, are you kidding me? You're seriously here right now? Like you couldn't have just kept going. It's amazing. Like I have to say, like, out of everybody who like came to play on this season, like everybody delivered in their own way. Everybody has delivered something. And like, I love that scene. I mean, that scene was just phenomenal to me. Like, I loved every second of it.
Yeah. Or I guess not Nick. I think it's evil vampire Donathan or evil Donathan vampire.
Evil Donathan vampire, right?
And as someone who is like a self-proclaimed like internet stalker, Nick got a lot of shit, but I had never seen evil vampire Donathan. So that's a new one. Also, who thought Donathan was going to get a reference on this season?
I know.
He's probably pumped about that, or maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's not the vampire part. He's the human version. So good for you, Donathan. You're the human. But who was it? Like I forget who it was, but they were like, do you shape your teeth like that? Do you do that like purposely? I thought that was so funny. I'm like, oh my God. But at the same time, these guys are just like ribbing each other. There was a couple good moments like that though. Like I feel like they cut a reward challenge tonight so that we could watch more of these like human moments between the cast. Cause even the Sarah just saying like, I'm wondering what's going to come after, Officer Sarah, other than people saying I'm funny and likable and beautiful and all, and she just keeps listing all these great things about herself. There was a lot of these little like human moments that I really, really enjoyed tonight. And one of those was Nick talking about how he's evil vampire Donathan.
Yeah. And I think it was Kim. Kim just like said this so smoothly. She was like, well, I think people think vampire teeth are hot. So that's good. I was like, holy moly. Nick.
And now we know why Kim picked her husband. Like, good job. Like
Kim's husband is vampire teeth.
Yeah, he has. Oh my God. Now Kim's husband's going to be trending.
Yeah. I haven't been on the internet since watching this episode, but man, I am excited for first she played like a cop, then she played like a criminal. And now she's pretty. Like whatever memes come out of the Sarah thing.
And now she's beautiful. Great. I know, it's absolutely hilarious. I'm just looking at our Twitter to see if anything like that came up. I do love the Garrett May TT sent us the how to lose Survivor. Let Tony Vlachos make the merge. This man is incredible. And it's him sprinting and Kage on down the path during the crazy idol hunt. And again, like we talked about in the preseason. You got to get rid of Boston Rob. You got to get rid of Sandra. Like you got to get rid of these like huge Parvati. You got to get rid of these people before you let them get too far. It's just a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. We were thinking that Tony was going to be like that. You got to get rid of Tony before you let him get too far. And like, I mean, I know it was in the back of everybody's mind, but I think they kind of let their guard down at how good at this game Tony really is. And the best thing for him is that he played Game Changers because, I mean, if Tony comes out of this as a 2-time winner, the only male 2-time winner, I mean, he'll be hosting the next Island of the Idols with Sandra. Like, that's it. Yeah. Boston Rob is not going to be that guy anymore because, by the way, I'm rewatching Marquesas and spoilers, everybody. He doesn't make the jury, but anyway, I just think like for Tony, like it's man, his second outing, terrible outing, but a lot of people have bad second outings. Like we see that a lot because of especially in these all returning seasons, we see that a lot based on like who's a big threat and who's not. I mean, look at Tina Wesson. She goes home first in All-Stars and then she comes back for Blood versus Water and goes to Final Four or something. Like it's unbelievable. Yeah. It doesn't really like the second time is always tough when you're playing against other second timers because nobody was looking at Sierra Dawn Thomas as a big threat. They were looking at Tony and Sierra as big threats. So, when I look at this, I feel like people underestimated him and they let their guard down at how good at this game he is. And when he wants to start causing chaos, I mean, I'll go on the record and say it. I really do believe if Tony wins this season and he's playing the game he's playing right now, I think Tony's the best player in Survivor ever. Like Absolutely. Better than Sandra, like sorry, Sandra, but the way Tony plays is not conducive to winning your first 2 times playing. It's not conducive to winning once. The fact that he would win 2 out of 3 times, it'd be unbelievable. It would just be absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. But we'll see. I'm super excited. And like you said, if Tony goes home next week, we will have gotten like everything that we've been wanting. Like we got like the Tony episode. So I don't think he's going home next week. I don't either. I think he's sticking around for a little while and everyone's going to be scrambling, but we'll see.
Well, and the good thing about where he is if he's in trouble, he's going to play as idol. And because he has put that target back square on his spine, if they're going to come after him, he's going to know. Because now there's no hiding it. He's got like no friends and he'll start to realize, wait, nobody's talking to me. And these people who were giving me their fire tokens now won't even talk to me. That's going to tip him off and he's going to be able to just sit there and say, okay, not doing this anymore. So yeah, I really like where Tony's sitting right now. I mean, as much as like there is to like, there's been ups and downs to this season. I mean, where we're sitting right now going into the final 8 after these last 2 tribals with Tyson going and Sophie going, like, this is amazing. I'm so excited to see how this is going to play out. Very excited.
Yeah, I am too, but we shall see.
And one last thing before we end this thing. I just saw Cochran's name come up in this. And did you see that GIF or that meme of Natalie Anderson and all of the people on Edge of Extinction getting up and like, what is that? Oh, it's got to be bad news. It's got to be bad news. And they just keep cutting back and forth to the boat. And then finally, it's just Natalie going, oh my God, and you just hear Jeff go, Cochran, and it's Cochran waving on the boat. That is like one of my favorite things I think I've ever seen this community make. So good on all of you, whoever did that. That was incredible and well done. You deserve all the credit.
Yeah, the 2 memes that have like the meme of putting the winners at War Song during like inappropriate timing I've been a huge fan of that. I know people are sick of it, but like Lauren O'Connell fainting right as that song drops is unreal. And what's so good about that Edge of Extinction one is, did you see the one where Janet like takes her top off?
Yeah.
That one's good too. Because Natalie turns and she's like, what the hell? It's blank. So it's almost like she's kind of angry. But no, it's so good. I want Cochran on the boat popping up everywhere. And I think he's liking it too.
I think he loves it. I think everybody's loving it. So
yeah,
but that's been fun.
Jeff saying Cochran's voice is the best part. Oh my God, it's Cochran.
Cochran, yeah, I know. Everybody who's saying I need a haircut and stuff, yeah, I know. But like, are we not all in the same boat? That hair salons aren't open. Like, are we not all in that same boat? And I'm not shaving my beard until I'm allowed to go back to California. So this bad boy is going to be real long. I know. Alexa, you should start doing the same things. Don't shave until you can go back to New York.
Oh, yeah. People are going to love that. Oh, no.
Yeah.
My brother and my dog are starting to look like the same being. They both have like fluffy black hair.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I have not seen your beard this long in a really long time. So excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. I mean, there's a good chance I'm here for like another 25 or so days. So yeah, I know. Hey, man.
Yeah, don't beard shame him, people. We're all,
Oh, anybody who's beard shame, you wish you could grow a beard like this. This is unkempt, not even like keeping it nice. And look how thick it is. It's unbelievable. Really is.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Everybody wishes they could grow a beard like this. I make hockey players jealous.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we are very, very lucky that Kim Spradlin did not go home this week because we are super excited for this Sunday's Predictions and Power Rankings guest. We have never had her on before. We are incredibly excited. I'm probably going to get her last name wrong, But this Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, we are going to be joined by Kat Ederson, question mark on Ederson, wasn't sure, of Survivor One World for next week's predictions and power rankings. We are very excited to talk to her. She is going to be a ton of fun, so make sure to tune into that. We are very, very pumped.
Judging by the chat over there, I mean, I know Forrest said it, but no, everybody's saying OMG, wow, yes, I'm so stoked, funny cat, wows. This is going to be great. I'm so excited. And I will say too, like, because Kat hasn't been on our TV since Blood versus Water, when like we were messaging her on Instagram, I did not recognize Kat. So like, I'm still not convinced this is the real Kat.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the same person anymore. I'm used to the other Kat, but I'm so excited to have her on this week. Will be our third person from Survivor One World to come onto our podcast. What in the heck?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What? Oh my heck. Yes,
as Nalia Dennis would say, oh my heck. Oh,
yeah,
man.
We are. I'm so happy you guys are excited. This is one that like kind of came up really quickly. We're super pumped for her. So yeah, make sure to tune in this Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern for that. In the meantime, right after this, Phil and I are doing a very exciting retrospective. So for those of you who are $10 patrons, what we're doing is we are making a cast of heroes versus healers versus hustlers, but only of first boots. We wanted to do something of first boots, but instead of listing them out, we figured we'd cast them. So make sure to become a patron so you can listen to that. If you only have $5, then we'll do a Q&A likely next week. Anything you can do counts. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We're very close to 8,000 subscribers, and we're very, very excited for that. And Phil has one more point before we log off.
I forgot. And if anybody has not been following, but you are following and you see it and you don't want to be a patron of us, go buy the Penner shirt, the ALS Foundation shirt that he and all the winners of Survivor Winners at War are on. Go buy that shirt. I think they said a third of it is going to charity, and based on the merchandise that we've sold, go buy our merchandise. But based on the merchandise we sold and then the payback we get for it, we understand that a large percentage is taken out by whoever makes the shirt. So the $10 going to charity is probably essentially what that shirt, what like Penner or anybody who made that shirt would be getting. So go and donate to a good cause, a great cause, and especially in these trying times, that can be more important than our Patreon. We believe that. So
yes, that is absolutely more important. Yes, good caveat there.
Thank you. But otherwise we will see everybody on Sunday.
Bye.